friends. Welcome to the Putting You Back Together Again show. I'm Rochelle Booker, aka Coach Ro. I'm excited to announce that today's show kicks off season 2. We are back in action, and thank you for tuning in tonight. Season 2 will be even more exciting and impactful than season 1. And I want to thank all of you for your love and support. Our audience is growing, and we're grateful that God is using my platform to be able to impact the world, change lives, and help people to build a better future. Well, I'm glad you're tuning in to tonight's show because it is the first installment of our fall series, The Debate Stage, How to Hold On to Our Democracy. With the election cycle heating up, this is an opportune time to talk about the upcoming election, especially the presidential election. And as you all know, the presidential debate is tonight. So on the heels of our show, the debate will take place. And that's why I wanted to do this show, to talk about, the candidates, educate you guys so you can make an informed decision on who to vote for. And because you need to know what they stand for, what they represent. And on the show tonight, that's what we're going to address. I have two very special guests with me tonight on the panel, and I'm going to introduce our first guest, who is Dr. Lori Thomas, who's a dear friend of mine. Lori is a former Associate Dean to Student Diversity, Health, Equity, and Inclusion, and full professor of medicine at the UTMB John Seeley School of Medicine in Galveston, Texas. Currently semi-retired, she has more than 35 years of identifying, recruiting, admitting, and graduating medical students, more particularly students of color. In her 23-year of history at UTMB, Dr. Thomas secured federal grants, developed research training programs, and established pipeline programs directed toward the recruitment of a group of diverse and underrepresented students who mirrored the population of the state of Texas. She promoted educational opportunities for students and faculty to develop an understanding of systemic and societal issues that impacted healthcare outcomes. Her innovations in DE&I related activities supported educational justice across the medical educational spectrum. A champion of student advocacy, she worked aggressively to implement UTMB's 5-year strategic plan for a diverse student body across its 5 schools. Woo! At this turning point in her career, Dr. Thomas has been an avid supporter of democratic causes, always with the hope of implementing programs that will enhance opportunities for a better tomorrow. Woo! Excellent resume. Welcome, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our second panelist is Neil Foote, Cornelius Neil Foote, aka Neil. Neil is Hall of Fame entrepreneur, educator, storyteller, and strategist. Neil Foote, an inductee to the National Association of Black Journalists, Hall of Fame, is an entrepreneurial media executive, author, and educator with experience in journalism, public relations, marketing, branding, education, publishing, radio, and the internet. He has a proven ability to develop new product strategies that support business, financial, and community objectives. Outside of his industry work, Foote is the executive director of Frisco Marketing Strategy for the Frisco Branch campus of the University of North Texas. Foote has managed and developed several websites from inception to launch. He is an expert at identifying, negotiating, and managing strategic relationships. He has extensive knowledge of print and digital and strategic communications. As a thought leader, he also is a principal of Foote Communications LLC, an integrated communications, marketing, and public relations firm. He is also the author of a journalism textbook, Principles of News, Kindle Hunt Publisher 2020, and a contributor to the textbook, Race, Gender, Class, and Media, Studying Mass Communication and Multiculturalism. Foote is a respected leader who has led membership-driven organizations for journalists, media executives, and public relations professionals. the native of Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Brooklyn, New York, is president of the National Black Public Relations Society, Inc., the former board chair of the National Kidney Foundation, serving North Texas, vice president of the board for Forefront Living, and a life trustee for the Lamplighter School. Foote has a BA in government from Wesleyan University, Middletown, Connecticut, and MSJ from Northwestern Universities and Mid-Hill School of Journalism, and an MBA at Southern Methodist University, Dallas, Texas. Woo, welcome, Neil. I got to catch my breath. You guys have such impressive resumes and experience. So thank you all for joining me this evening. So the theme of this show, like I said at the top of the hour, is how do we hold on to our democracy? And the theme is for the subject for tonight's subtopic is Your Vote Matters, which is one of the most important ways to hold on to our democracies. And there are several ways that our democracy is at stake. And the first way is obviously voting rights, the threat of voting rights. This is a reality that most people don't even understand. In fact, there are 14 states, Lori and Neil, as you all probably know, 14 states have passed laws making voting a lot harder. And this is taking us back to the Jim Crow era. We want to move forward and not backward. So having said this with my intro, I'm going to ask you guys a question to kick off our conversation. What do you say to the people who are not motivated to vote in this upcoming election because they don't like either Trump or Vice President Harris? What do you guys say to these people?
Well, I think I'll take the first stab at that because that's a very, very critically important question, and it must be answered likewise. In keeping with the theme that your vote matters, it is critically important that you understand what the goals are for this election. It's not about being a Democrat or Republican. It's about saving our democracy. And in this regard, you must understand that your vote does count. If it did not count, they would not be going through such extreme measures for voter suppression and doing all kinds of things like gerrymandering in order to suppress the vote. So it's critically important that you understand that your vote does matter and it will count. And especially in the state of Texas, it is critically important that we work together collectively to turn Texas blue this year. Because if we don't, and if the extreme MAGA agenda prevails, and if we end up with Trump as a dictator, our rights, not only our voting rights, our reproductive rights, our civil rights, and every other right that we would have will be severely curtailed. So it's really important that you get out and vote and understand what's at stake. Our democracy is at stake, and it's critically important that we understand that.
Absolutely. That was powerful. Thank you. Neil, you want to add to that?
Well, I want to tell a story. Several years ago, I was teaching a class. It was about race, gender, and media. And we were having a discussion about democracy, about voting rights. And at that point in time, the Congress was debating voting rights. So it was a great opportunity to discuss the importance of voting with my class, a very diverse class. And the conversation was going down the road where basically there were folks, particularly mainly white folks, who didn't understand, well, why is this a big deal? You can vote, you can just go to the, what's the point? And this conversation is going on back and forth with several students, black and white. And then I turned to another part of my classroom, and there's one of my older students. She'd come back to school to get her degree, and she's in tears. Wow. She's in absolute tears. And I say, hold on a second, everybody. Hold on a second, everybody. Tell me what's going on. And she said, look, I'm so sorry, but I heard stories about my family not being able to vote when I was growing up. I'm old enough to remember because she grew up here in Texas, and I mean I grew up in New York, but but we know that racial equity and Jim Crow laws did not
Yep.
go away in Texas. Well, some
Right.
might say they still haven't gone away, but they didn't go away until like the 70s, right?
Right.
I mean,
That's correct.
so right. So there are people
Hmm.
here, and this woman was relating to the students and said like, this is important to me, my
Yes.
family, and what we've all gone through. So fast forward to the importance of this election.
Right.
And gosh, it hurts me so so much to say, well, it's just, I don't care about these people. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. No, 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 because what we saw happen in 2016 was
Yep.
the result of people feeling that way.
Yes.
And guess what
Mhm.
has happened, right? The
Yes.
Supreme Court will never return for at least generations now to really a body that will consider all issues about democracy, voting rights,
Right.
women's rights.
Yep.
Again, because the ideology of the legislature of the Supreme Court has shifted because the president, a Republican president, in Donald Trump, had the power to appoint justices that shift the power of the court, go
Yes.
downstream, and that means that the state legislators that are now passing laws to impose voting IDs, to change the hours of the voting booths, change
Yes.
the ability to submit provisional ballots, to question you without almost any justification of why I'm sorry, you don't have the proper ID, go home and get the proper ID. This is going to play itself out in
Yep.
in 2024, and we have to be ready, and we got to be motivated, because the opportunity for us is really revolutionary, in the sense of revolutionary to really command control of this country as a leader in democracy in the world,
Yeah.
or return us to a very isolated, xenophobic hate country that's known for its hate, which is not what I believe a majority of the country really believes.
And so we don't need the candidate who's supporting the Proud Boys. Go ahead, Dr. Thomas. Go ahead.
And it's critically important that just today, Speaker Johnson was on television talking about the new bill that they have before the House, which aims to have have proof of citizenship before you're allowed to vote.
Yeah.
The federal law does not allow you to vote if you're not a citizen. So it is a redundant kind of bill. And what they aim to do is shut the government down. And former President Trump has already called in to ask the Republicans to push this bill forward. And so this, Neil, is another example of what you've just so eloquently explained in terms of why we cannot allow these individuals to continue to control our country in that way. And we must do everything in our power to rise to the occasion and get out and vote so that our voices are heard. This is the only way that we can impact our democracy and keep it, is through the voting process.
Absolutely, because your vote is your voice. So if you want your voice to be heard, you have got to go and vote. Absolutely. Oh, you guys nailed it. You are spot on. Absolutely. And it's hypocritical, because you talk about citizenship and how he doesn't want certain people to have the eligibility to vote, and even convicted felons can't even vote. But how is a convicted felon able to run for the highest office in the nation? I'm not understanding. I'm not connecting the dots with that at all. So we've got to change some laws and get the right lawmakers in Congress to do so. Yeah. And speaking of our history, you guys brought up a good point. It's a good segue to what I wanted to bring up. People need to know about our history, especially as it relates to voting. It wasn't until 1870, with the 15th Amendment, that Black men were able to vote. And even then, they were still intimidated, at like today, what's the difference, and could not exercise their right to vote. many states use literacy tests and other barriers to make it harder to vote, as you eloquently said, Neil. And women couldn't vote until 1920. Are you kidding me? Then we saw more, at that point, then we start seeing more advancement with the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So, yeah, we've made some progress, but we still have a long way to go.
But let's look at, there may not be poll taxes, there may not be literacy tests, but look at what the proposals are, Project 2025, and already as you've discussed of how there are laws now being pushed and promoted that one will almost defund public education, which means that there will be millions, potentially millions of folks who will get access to a subpar education in favor of voucher programs that will take money away out of public education into other programs, right? Mm-hmm. We've got the, and so if you keep the electorate, not smart, then you hope they will listen to whatever a leader, that's what dictators do. They don't want people to challenge authority. They want people to accept what the word is and go on without any ignorance in itself. This sense and this is what's so crazy, right? It's not even blatant. We want women in the kitchen. We don't want them to work. We don't want them to speak out, right? I mean, am I crazy?
It's overt, out of the box.
Very overt. You're absolutely right. They're not hiding it. They're very blatant about it.
And so why should you vote? I mean, is this what America is? I don't think so.
At that point, it's amazing. Even back to what you guys were talking about, reproductive rights and women's rights, our right to choose, right? How they overturned Roe v. Wade. So how is it that so many women are still supporting the Republican Party, even in light of a candidate who has been convicted of sexual assault? That and the fact that that particular candidate, Trump, doesn't even support, advancement with women's right to choose. And so it's amazing how women are still supporting Trump. You guys have any take on that?
That has remained an enigma for me to really try to decipher. But the only thing there are a couple of things that I think are at play. First of all, if you look at their party affiliation, Republicans have been programmed down through the ages to follow the party rule. They particularly don't care what the issues are. If they're Republican, they're going to vote Republican. They're going to follow the Republican mandate. And that has not been really instilled in us to the same extent. I just met with a pediatric and an adult otolaryngologist, both of them. They're an interracial couple. And I tried to get an understanding of why do you subscribe to still being a Republican when you see all of the lies, the disingenuousness, the out and out blatant attack on civil rights, social justice, and all of these kinds of misogyny that's going on. And he said, I've been trained as a Republican, and that's the way that I think about it, is following the party rule. And the sad reality is that just look in the state of Texas, the two women who almost died because they were denied adequate health care, adequate GYN health care. They could not, they put it in the terms of abortion, but they could not get the kind of care that they needed. And it wasn't until finally the one patient almost bled out and was in the intensive care unit that doctors were allowed to intervene and save her life. And I asked people, what in the world is this? They've just categorized abortions into reproductive health care. And the things they're very dissimilar. You can have a miscarriage and still need a pregnancy termination because of subsequent complications of that pregnancy. And I don't really see that as an elective abortion just because you don't want to have a child. But I think along party lines that they've been taught and programmed to follow the Republican mandate. And if they say abortions are not allowed, they will vote along party lines.
Wow. Great insight. I love that, Lori. Great insight. I've got a question here, guys, that just came through from Marvin Stone. What are some specific strategies that could help mitigate the numerous voter suppression laws here in Texas and nationwide? Oh, excellent question. Neil,
It
you want to
is.
take? Yeah. Neil,
Sure. Well, yeah. No, I think several things. Is we this is a moment for all of us to really be very bold and call out people on what they're doing and what's wrong. Because if we remain silent, we will only be talking amongst ourselves and not really making change. So, what from suppression laws, if we see that there are tendencies for voter suppression, then we need to be loud and vocal in the sense of calling local media to let them know what's going on, calling their state representatives, both on the House and the Senate side, whatever, if they're Republican or Democrat, we need to let them know that we see what's going on. We need to activate our NAACP. We need to also, reach out to some of the national organizations that are looking out, for this, the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, and others that are really, ready and waiting to be on the ground of fighting this. So we have to let people know. Otherwise, it will be a myth that's created about voter fraud. There is no voter fraud in Texas or the United States. This has been proven. Look, when I was working with Tom Joyner, we did voter registration during the 04, 08, 012 elections. Tom would go to the Hill and make a statement, and there were always allegations about voter fraud. Nothing. The number of incidents are so incremental that that's a lie. So we have to call out those incidents and to all the authorities, use our social media platforms, use our traditional media platforms, so folks see that we're looking at you. We're not hiding, and we have to take control of that.
It must be about exposure, as you've so rightly said, Neil, but we also have to protest. And when you see something wrong, as the eloquent Michelle Obama has said, do something. Do not allow that opportunity to pass you by to expose any untoward event that's going on. But the critical thing in terms of a specific strategy is education. One of the critical problems that we have, and especially in the Black community, is that we do not pass on the educational advantages that we should be employing in terms of civics, in terms of government structure. How does it work? And so that you can identify really absurdities when you see them, or wrongdoings when you see them. So we need to take it upon ourselves to educate not only our family members, our friends. You're on Facebook, use whatever social media, social platforms, tuning into this particular talk show. You will get a wealth of information. But the other thing that I think that I will call for is our Black churches to set aside specific programming to educate its members. And we can do it collectively and collaboratively. Like, look at all of the mega churches in just in the Houston area. What if we were to form a group to educate individuals about the ongoing voter suppression laws and what we need to do about it? I think that would be critically important. So education for me is the key.
I love it. We have to educate ourselves and inform ourselves. And we have to have some skin in the game, and we need to have some responsibility and accountability for this too. We can't just buy and take this for granted. And people are there's too many people still on the sidelines saying, scratching their head, well, I don't know if I should vote. It's really not going to make a difference. What world are you living in? It's going to make all the difference. And then the same folks who are complaining about the election, about the laws, about the injustices going on, many of those people didn't even vote in the last election. If you don't vote, don't complain.
That is so correct. But when someone approached me and says that my vote doesn't count, I said, I'm so glad to hear that. You're the exact person that I need to say, go out and vote. If it doesn't count, go cast your vote then and look at the results and see what happens. After all, you won't know if it matters if you don't cast it. And so, again, the education of our people is critically important, and not being negative, but explain why it's so critically important and try to get them to understand. But I always tell them, you're the exact person I'm looking for, because if you don't believe that your vote counts, why do you think they're going to such extreme lengths to suppress your vote, to take away our voting rights? And it's a struggle, and we should honor our forebears in terms of the struggles they went through in order to get us the right to vote.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Thomas said it so well. I mean, I think there's this lack of a sense of history, and certainly even from some of our own generation about who want to sit on the couch and complain,
Right.
Right? And, so there's no excuse there. Absolutely no excuse for any of us from our generation to be sitting on the couch, because we've lived through it. We have generations have lived through it. Now, for younger folks, which and the Vice President Harris, I think, has finally re-energized a wide swath of folks. I got a chance to go to the DNC in Chicago with another project. Politicsincolor.com is a site that my buddy and I started back in 2008. And so we got a chance to interview so many folks and get on the ground, and the energy in the room, the energy in this nation, I think it's going to be reignited tonight after the debate in many different ways, that people really, want to feel good about themselves and the country in which they live.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to translate, which Dr. Thomas, you just said it. It's like, okay. And I let me use this other analogy. I tell people, because I've been in the media all my career, and people are like, "Oh, the media, they just make up stuff." I don't. We don't need them. So I said, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Do you want all your local newspapers to go away and your local TV stations to go away, and only have government officials tell you what's going on in the world? Because, and I remind people, I said, in many parts of the world, almost 3/4 of the world, that's how there are no democracies. That's how dictators run, because newspapers are shut down, journalists are killed or kidnapped, questions of authority, those who do are sent away. So is that what we want? I don't think so. I think if we sent, Dr. Thomas, maybe we should send some of these people to some of these countries where they can't speak up. And let's be real, some of our African countries where they cannot speak up, right? And they will disappear. And then we're like, wait a second, what happened? I thought I could speak, right? And it's like, oh no, I don't think so. So what we have here is so precious and so real. Why do immigrants want to come here? Because they truly believe that they have a chance, right? And so many have contributed to what we're doing here, and I hope there'll be pushback in our conversation, in the debate tonight, that says immigrants really have changed this country, continue to change this country, and that I would say that the former president has so many immigrants working at Mar-a-Lago that he probably doesn't realize who's serving his food, who's preparing his food, who's mowing the grass, who's trimming the palm trees, who's making sure the greens of his golf course are perfect. Who are those immigrants? So
but
we've
Neil,
got to precious that. Yes.
But Neil, former President Trump's wife is an immigrant. Her parents were immigrants to this country.
Yeah.
Let's look at the reality of the situation. If you're an immigrant from a specific Western country, then that's okay. But if you're an immigrant from some of the other nations that are not well liked, especially nations of color, then there's an aggressive time for suppression of those people to come to the United States. And this country was built on the backs of immigrants.
That's true. This country was built. I mean, Black people and Indians were here. Black people helped to build the country. It's a double.
Who built the railroads to the West? The Chinese.
The Chinese. Yeah, right.
I mean, so let's not even get this twisted.
Yeah,
This is crazy, and this whole false narrative about Haitian immigrants now, and we live in Texas, right? In this narrative of Mexican drug people, and it's like, I'm sorry, no, yes, they exist. They're
yeah,
black, they're white criminals. Actually, there was we could turn on true crime video right now and see all about the mafia bosses. I think most of those were white guys. Yes, last I checked.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And who were immigrants, right?
I think that's the Republicans' way of trying to stoke fear and
Yeah.
fear of of the immigrants and of people of color, so that, oh my gosh, we've got to vote Republican, we've got to get them out of here. And even African Americans, look at the issue with driving while black, walking while black. I mean, look at Tyreek Hill, the recent incident with Tyreek Hill. I mean, are you kidding? And it takes 4 cops to pull him out of the car to detain him. I mean, this country is going, it's going in the wrong direction.
Okay, just stop and think about that. If Trump were to become president with absolute police immunity, what would have happened to him? His blood would still be running warm in the streets, unfortunately. That would be my prediction. And young black men must be aware of what they stand to lose by having a dictator, and especially with the Supreme Court having given almost complete immunity to the president in power. And so that sent a real chill down my spine when I looked at their actions, to say that, oh my God, we're losing our civil rights, we're losing our voting rights, and in fact, we're losing our right to just merely exist in the format, in the form that we want to exist. Freedom to worship, freedom to go to the church that you want, freedom to go to a synagogue, whatever you want. That freedom is being collectively challenged and harnessed by the mega extremists, so that we won't have any of those freedoms. I was trying to develop a flyer, and I came up with the perfect one. In a circle, it has freedom all around it. And in the center of it, it has joy, and it has hope, and it has truth. And in that regard, we must think about our collective freedoms that we have, and they are really being assaulted and taken away from us. That's another reason why we must get out and vote. We must encourage our friends, our families, our colleagues, anyone, even if you see them on the street, tell them vote, and you must vote Democratic. I mean, that's what I do.
It's a movement, y'all. We need to have a major movement to push people to do the right thing and make the right decisions. We want to ask people to please call in and drop your comments or questions in the chat. Malcolm, remind everyone what the call-in number is.
The call-in number, folks, is 832-560-2885, and it's scrolling at the bottom of the screen in case you forget. Whether you're tuned in on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, you're more than welcome to call in on topic.
Thank you. Yes, we want to hear from you. Get engaged, just like we want you to get engaged in this election. Let's get engaged in this conversation. So, guys, we kind of touched on DE&I, right? They're trying to defund that. Well, they've already rolled back affirmative action. So, with the rollbacks of affirmative action in DE&I programs, how will this impact not only corporate America, but enrollment in predominantly white universities? What's your take on that?
We've already seen about a 10% diminution in the enrollment at prestigious institutions like MIT and Stanford University.
Wow.
And the real sad reality is that without affirmative action and without DEI programs, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's a tremendous assault to public and higher education. If you want to go to professional school, law school, medical school, graduate school, you're going to continue to see a diminution in those in the admission and graduation from those institutions of higher learning. And the sad reality that we're going to face is that then how are we going to educate our own people? Who's going to take care of us? Who's going to become the doctors of tomorrow? Who are going to become the biomedical researchers of tomorrow? Who will challenge the system? Even with the NIH and research funding, there will be cuts to NIH funding. As we know, our life depends upon research and healthy outcomes. And DEI programs and diminution will have a direct impact negatively on our healthy outcomes, because health disparity will only get worse because you simply will not have those individuals graduating from institutions of higher learning. And we must fight that on every front. We have to fight that.
Wow.
Now, my term for DEI means that we developed every incentive to achieve DEI, developing every incentive to achieve, because we know that as people of color, we've always had to outshine our colleagues in order to just to sit at the table or just to be a part of an institution of higher learning, just to get admitted. We have to demonstrate our collective abilities and capabilities. And so without affirmative action and DEI, our educational outlook is really pretty grim.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you for that, Dr. Thomas. Yeah,
Well,
you're
and I think you're right on point, Dr. Thomas, and I'll pick up on that. This, what I like to say is DEI equals ROI, which means DEI equals return on investment. You know, I
Great.
remember, right? It's about the money.
Yes.
The country is already in some parts of the country majority minority, right? So
Yes.
that is a fact. Yeah. Look at the ads on TV. Our marketers, the major brands of this country, have already realized that Black people buy stuff, interracial couples buy stuff, Asians, Hispanics, people of all racial and ethnic qualities are the market. Cars, personal care, items that, again, in our lifetimes, we would never have thought, oh my gosh, Black people are selling a Lexus? Oh, right? These are things that, we used to hear our parents say, oh, that'll never happen. It's like, it is happening. So our marketers have already left the station. They're like, look, you folks can take away DEI, you can do this, but we know where the money is. We know that if we don't sell these products, because we know people will buy them, if we don't get in front of this audience, then we are losing money on the table. I used to do sessions, and I still do. I used to do them for the newspaper industry and for the public relations industry. And I'd always get someone to say, "Oh, Neil, this DEI, this diversity." I was a minority. This is in the '90s. I was the minority affairs director for the American Society of Newspaper Editors, right? So that was minority was okay, right? And so they was, "Oh, this is all just you're just making too much of it. It's not quoted." I said, "I'm sorry. So you're telling me that you run a major newspaper or a major PR agency, and you're saying that you do not want to include major sections and segments of the population who buy products, who read your newspaper, who might buy ads. You're just going to let that money aside because you don't think it's worth your time to write stories about, promote, sell products to." And it always got silence, right?
Of course.
Which I think,
yes.
Which goes, which is, the stupid thing. DEI equals ROI. It's about money. It's about changing the course of this money. At the end of the day, people who believe in doing good for this country are going to realize, what we're seeing is this grasp of straws of trying to hold on to an America that they thought still existed, and maybe there's some vestiges of this country are like that. But even then, the last thing I'll say is I would always open my class that I taught in race, gender, and media and say, and even my diversity sessions, I say, well, again, if you turn on the TV, what do you see? When you walk down the street, what do you see? Black people, brown. So I'm sorry, if you're trying to run away from it,
you can't.
You can't.
You cannot.
Yeah. And the way that I tell people to overcome any type of issue, like any type of injustice, racism, sexism, we have to confront it. We can't run away from it. So people who are on the sidelines, well, what should I do to help fight this? You've got to confront it. You can't just talk about it. You have to put some action to what you're talking about. So we've got to there's got to be action behind what we're talking about, right? So thank you guys for weighing in on that. That was excellent commentary. Thank you for that. According to the Brookings Institution, democratic erosion has two main sources. election manipulation and executive overreach, which is abuse of power. And we saw an example of abuse of power on January 6th with the insurrection, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's just unbelievable of how much, overreach takes place and abuse of power takes place at this level of in our democracy in the president's in a presidential capacity. And that should not be the case. So I'm hoping we get some legislation in place to really tighten this up. Because just because you're president doesn't mean that you don't adhere to the laws, that you are above the law. That's just not the case.
And that's the foundational principle of our democracy. It is the rule of law. And unfortunately, when you see elements like the insurrection that took place on January 6th and all the other abuses of power, like trying to pretend like you are president when you're actually running for president, is beyond me. But I fail to understand why the news media is kind of complicit in giving people like Trump a pass. I don't understand that. And his behavior has been normalized. This democracy country is still based upon the rule of law, and no one is above the rule of law and no one is beneath the rule of law. But we know that if you're a billionaire, you can afford the best legal scholars to help you out, to manipulate the system, to delay actions in the system. And we have got to protest that. That's why it's so critically important that we vote. Our vote does count, because we have to maintain that structural, foundational understanding of the rule of law.
That's right. Excellent. Thank you for that. And another abuse of power and another attack on our democracy is Project 25. And my producer is going to put a slide up so we can see a list of some of the things that they are actually trying to enact, to put in place to undermine our democracy. So producer, if you can put that slide up, and we're not going to go through the whole list, but I just want us to take a look at, so people actually know what that looks like. Right. It's a long list, and I've got a printout here. I'm just not gonna go through all of it, but there's a ban on African American and gender studies in all levels of education. Are you kidding me? So they don't want our students, Black and brown students, to be educated. They want to ban them. It's because when you're not educated, you're not empowered. You're not literate. You can't read, you can't write, you can't do anything. That's the form of a way of the country to control you when you're not educated. Cutting entitlement programs. We already know that. Elimination of unions. Complete ban on abortions. We talked about that. Banning contraceptives. This is all part of the Project 2025. Defund FBI and Homeland Security. There you go. Dictatorship. End marriage equality. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Mass deportation of immigrants and incarceration in camps. End birthright citizenship. Ban Muslims from entering the country. I mean, it's unbelievable. End the Affordable Care Act.
They also want to end the Department of Education, and that's really critical.
Oh, we got a caller. We got a caller. Hi, caller. Thank you for calling into the Putting You Back Together Again show. Who are we talking with?
This is Marvin Stone again.
Oh, hi, Marvin. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for calling in. Your mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on the Project 2025. Dr. Thomas kind of touched on something a while ago about education, and one thing that kind of entered my mind was, we're talking about Project 2025. And I think a lot of people think this kind of came about in the last couple of years, but if you do the research, you know that conservative think tanks and other conservative organizations have been putting this thing together for the last 30, 40 years. And it's just gotten to the point where they saw an opportunity to do this. I guess my question is, what is being done on the progressive side or Democratic side as far as a coalition of think tanks and organizations that get together to help develop legislation to combat or even mitigate some of these items on Project 2025?
Excellent question.
The ACLU is very actively engaged, but in talking to a colleague of mine, there is a group of lawyers who are really working together cohesively to tackle the very issue, Mr. Stone, that you've just raised in terms of how to ensure election integrity, how to make sure that we don't succumb to voter suppression. And the one lawyer, Mark Elias, has been very, very actively involved in litigation, especially with the gerrymandering for years and years. But when I was very much worried about the election deniers in all of the battleground states having a stake in terms of not certifying the elections. But I was reassured that there are lawyers actively working in each of these states to make sure that our election goes by fairly and squarely. And I can't tell you the name of them, but the American Bar Association should have the name of that group that's actively working to oversee our election results.
Excellent. Thank you, Marvin, for that question. Excellent question. Thank you, and for that response, Lori. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, we're having a good discussion here. You know, another thing I want to touch on, we haven't really talked about this, but I want us to bring this to the forefront because I've been hearing a lot of chatter about this, and it's about identity politics. So there's so many people of color saying, why do we have to vote for Kamala Harris because she's Black and I'm Black? Why do I have to vote for someone who's Black because I'm Black? So I'm hearing that. So let's have a discussion about this, guys. What's your take on that? Like, weigh in on that.
It's not about Kamala. It's not about Joe Biden. It's not about Trump. It's about the democratic principles on which this country was founded. It's about voting to ensure that we remain a democratic state where each individual have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not about Kamala being an African American and Indian American female. It's not about that. The overall picture is that our country must survive this attack on our democratic principles. It has to survive because the alternative, as Neil has so eloquently stated before, is that we end up with a dictator rule. Now, if you want Jim Jong-un or Putin or Obama or those people to come in and control the United States, then you should go and live in those areas. The rest of us want our freedom to choose, our freedom to live, our freedom of speech, our freedom to life, and our liberties, our freedom to become educated without constraints. So it's not about voting for someone who is Black. You look at what they stand for, what are the principles, but even beyond that, look at what they have accomplished. If you have a job, that's due to the Democrats. If you have, and a lot of people don't realize those stimulus checks, that was all Democrats. Look at what happened during the pandemic. It was the Democrats who pulled us out of that brink of disaster. 1.2 million people died and lost their lives as a result of Trump's incompetence. Yes. So it's not about, get the big picture. It's not about being Black. It's about looking at our country and saving it from the jaws and the claws of a dictatorship. And
That's
if
right.
we allow that to happen, we are not going to be living in a free society.
That's right.
Dr. Thomas, preach.
Yes.
You nailed it. Because we heard these same arguments back in 2008
with Obama.
Yep. Who is this guy? He doesn't have any experience. What does he think he can do? He's too liberal. He doesn't know how to govern. What does he, why should, just because I'm a brother or a sister, why I got to support him? What he gonna do for me? Right. so fast forward, which isn't, think about this. That was 16 years ago when that campaign said. So again, this irony in this country's history that we had our first African American president 16 years ago, and we are the potential to have a second one within our lifetimes. Things
Yeah.
that we would have never thought of before. So
Mhm.
so let's put race aside that says, and again, Dr. Thomas really said it well, and I think we've hit on these points before,
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
you wake up in the morning as a Black person in this country, and let me personalize it more, as a Black male in America, me driving to work is a
Oh,
hazard.
yes. Yes,
And
absolutely.
not only that, because I'm light skinned Black and I kind of look Hispanic, so that's like I got 2 strikes. Oh wait, 3 strikes because I have a nice car. So it's like, whoa, man, same, So what can happen to me when I see a state trooper pull up behind me or local police? I'm like, is it driving while? What's going to happen? Is that, and I'm sure folks out there, the white folks out there looking at this, like, come on, Neil, that's ridiculous. What
No, it's not.
you're
No.
educated, you're successful, you live in a beautiful, you got everything. No, I'm sorry.
You're right.
I have to be conscious of that. So I want to at least know that if I'm going to live in a country that loves me and respects me, that I have at least someone looking after my interests. Now, that's not going to be, the vice president, Kamala Harris's. She's not looking out for me. She's going to look out for everybody. But
Everybody.
that sense of bringing the country together, of willing to lean down, to get on a knee and hug a kid, to listen to a grandma, to listen to people and serve. What President Biden did, to your point, is that quite honestly, we have inflation because we had to save this country. We had to get people back to feeling like they had money in the bank. People lost their jobs, they lost family and loved ones.
Absolutely.
And if you talk to economists now, many will say, we thought we were going to have a massive recession, that things were going to be bad. And guess what? Yes, are things a little bit more expensive than they are? They probably are, and they shouldn't be. But I would suspect if you had some corporate CEOs on this, on your next, conversation, Coach Rowe, they would say, well, Mr. CEO or Mr. CEO of a company, did you raise prices because you were getting mad at people or you were trying to make money? Oh, well.
Trying to make money.
Did you have to raise prices? Well, I had to pay people more. Oh, you had to pay people more so that they could afford your products, your services, a house, a home, an apartment, a car. So, if we want a better society, then that's what we gotta buy into, and I think that's what we're going to hear tonight. That's what we've heard, throughout her life. Vice President Kamala Harris has talked about these things, and the other guy hasn't. I don't want to return to a world where it's dark. I mean, talk to anyone during that period from 20. Not only even prior to COVID, there was a depression in this country. There's still people recovering from mental health illness because of that period, and we can't return to that.
It was almost as if every single day was a day of confusion, conflict, and chaos. And I call it the 3 C's. The 3 C's. And we became the animosity with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors. You couldn't even have a really good conversation. It was almost, you had to be pitted against someone else in a partisan manner. And I do believe that Harris and Walz will return us back to normalcy, that we will be free to talk and to feel normal again. And that is what is so important. But let me just make one other point. And Neil, you hit on this very critically important. When people say, well, in the current administration is responsible for inflation, please do not forget that we're coming off of the pandemic. And the United States has the best world-class economy. We did not go into the recession. We're still holding our own. Unemployment is still between 4.1 and 4.2%. So if you want a job, you can get a job. The Biden administration is not responsible for the inflationary grocery prices or
Yeah.
the gas prices, but we're seeing a return. Gas prices are falling, food prices are getting better, and so it's not about I can't vote for them because inflation is still high and I can't afford the cost of an apartment. But Harris is going to address those issues, as we will see in this debate that's coming up. And I would encourage everyone to listen and listen carefully, make notes, and understand her overall economic goal for the country is that everyone will succeed. Everyone will have an opportunity to pursue the American dream, as has been spelled out by our Democratic leaders for so many years.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And just like we didn't get in this predicament overnight, we're not going to get out of it overnight.
Exactly.
So
Right.
to think that presidents can just wave a magic wand and make everything right overnight. That's not the case. We have got to have some level of patience, but we also have to have, keep our hope and faith in God, but, support the candidates, but listen to your point, listen to what their strategies are, listen to what their vision is. And if their vision doesn't line up to what you think the vision of the country ought to be, then don't vote for them. But don't vote against somebody just because they're a woman or because they're a person of color. And, so just like we don't want you to vote for someone just because they are a person of color, same thing goes on the flip side. Don't vote against them because they're a person of color or because they happen to be a woman. If they're educated,
very important.
Yeah, very important. So it's got to be the candidate that stands for the right thing for the country, obviously for families, how they're going to effectuate change and move us in the right direction, which means going forward, not going back to Jim Crow, which is where we're headed if we vote for the other candidate. Well, this has been a great discussion. We've only got 5 minutes left. I need to do a part 2 because we are just getting started.
Yeah.
Do a whole nother hour on this, but I don't want anyone to miss a debate tonight, which will be coming on shortly. Do we have a comment?
No, ma'am. I was just going to inform you that you can take as much time as you need.
Oh no, I'm gonna wrap it up so that we can have time to get ready for the real debate. This was kind of the prelude to the debate that's going to happen tonight. But you guys have added so much color and insight and value to this discussion, and I'm hoping our audience that tuned in. Looks like we had quite a few people listening on tonight. They were a bit quiet, but I know they were listening. And I'm hoping that they really, heard what we said and internalized everything we said, and they apply what we said about the importance of voting. So I'm gonna give you guys each a minute to give any last closing remarks before I wrap everything up. So Lori, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Coach Rowe, and I have thoroughly enjoyed participating in this talk. My preface is that there's a better hope for tomorrow, but only if we actively engage and save our country and make sure that we vote to ensure that that democracy prevails. And we have the power. We have the intrinsic power. We have the extrinsic power to do so. And that power lies with every individual within the United States of America. If you want a dictator, that's not for America. That's not the foundational principles upon which this country was founded. We need to band together and realize that we have the collective power to steer this country in the right direction. And that direction is by voting and by making sure that we stand up for what's right. We fight for our freedoms. We fight for our freedom to live and to live productively, happily, and in a joyous way, as our Vice President Harris has so eloquently stated. We have to include others in our educational understanding of the critically importance of this election. And so I would encourage everyone to get out, get active, become involved, talk to people, make sure that they vote, make sure that they understand what they're voting for and who they're voting for and why. It's just that important. Remember, when you ask, what's in it for me? Your health care is on the line. Medicare is on the line. Medicaid is on the line. The future of this country is on the line. And this is the most important election in our lifetime that we will witness. And so let's go forward and know that there is a brighter tomorrow, but only if we actively engage ourselves and make sure by voting that we do so and secure the future of this democratic country for years and generations to come.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I love it. Thank you for that. Neil, you want to add anything else to that?
It's hard to top. Amen to Dr. Thomas and what you said. I think it's. I always like to tell folks when I'm always challenged again about the role of democracy, the role of the First Amendment and the free press. We are at a critical juncture in this country. We are at a historical point in this country. We need to take this moment very, very, very seriously, and that's no joke. I'm not running for Congress. I'm not running for anything. I'm just saying, I'm looking out after my young adult daughter and the future that she has in this country. I'm looking out for us in terms of what future we have and the generation that we have and what we can get the best out of. And, to me, the decision on November 5th is exactly about that the best decision goes to, the groundwork that President Biden laid, the enthusiasm and the expertise and really, at the end of the day, the really brilliant strategists that the President Harris will be surrounded by, and the huge positive notion that this country will have. I go back to no drama Obama. That's where we need to be. We haven't had a drama during the Biden administration. I think we want to continue that. We want to continue to grow and create opportunity. And we do that by listening, learning, and acting. We need to vote. We need to bring a couple friends. We need to have tough conversations with those people in our families who are saying, no, come with me. Let me get you registered and let's go and let's vote. And you will see why it will benefit you now and long into the future.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, both of you, well said. I really appreciate your commentary. You guys did an excellent job. This is not your last appearance on my show. I promise you that. So we really need to understand what the political candidates stand for and how it will impact our future, as my guests have so eloquently stated already. According to a survey, 62% of adults believe democracy will be threatened based on who wins the 2024 presidential election. That's a high number, 62%, guys. So the stakes are high. So please make sure that you are not only registered to vote, but that you go vote, because your vote is your voice. And make an informed decision and vote for the people who will make a difference in this country and who will take our country forward. I like to glean on Matthew 28 in the scripture, as a woman of faith that I am. And Matthew 28 is the Great Commission. Remember, Jesus told his disciples to go. So I'm going to challenge my audience. Matthew 28, go, the Great Commission for not just discipleship, but for voting. Go vote, because your vote does matter and your vote does count. So there are several ways that our democracy is at stake, and we've already talked about it so many ways, and we've got to protect our democracy. And we don't want to go backwards to the bondage that we've been in. So we've got to change our mindset, and we've got to put some action to our words and actually have skin in the game to make a difference and support the best candidate, which we believe is Kamala Harris. But whoever wins the election, regardless of that, God is still in control. He will take care of his people. So that does it for us, guys. We're a little bit over the hour, but thank you for staying with us tonight. We love you, and God bless you. And please do the right thing and go vote. Be sure to follow me and to like me on social media, and stay tuned for our next week's session. We're going to have a very exciting segment for next week too. So thank you guys again for tuning in. I love you, and be blessed.